Anjali on WNHH Radio. I'm your host, Anjali Wasson, and I invite you to stay with me for half an hour as we examine immigration, the idea of home, and what New Haven in America means to the people who weren't born here. We all come from different places, and we choose and sometimes not choose to make this place our home. What does that mean to us? And where does it leave us in terms of looking at the future and the past? Today I'm joined by Anastasia Ugolik, who was born in the Ukraine and moved to the US when she was 8. She joins me in the studio today to talk about what arriving here as a preteen felt like and what life in the US has been since then.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. I just want to start off, Anastasia, by talking a little bit about the Ukraine for those who aren't familiar with the country. Can you tell us a little bit about the Ukraine?
Sure. Ukraine is currently, geographically, it's the biggest country in Europe if you exclude Russia. And currently, and for actually a couple hundred years, we've been at a strive for democracy, for independence, really. From different superpowers. Currently, we're trying to incorporate into the European Union. Hopefully, that'll happen eventually. But right now, it's a very difficult time. The country itself is beautiful. You have all 4 seasons. You have beautiful fields of sunflowers. It is the biggest exporter of wheat in Europe. We are the bread bowl of Europe. The people are all very hospitable. You walk into somebody's house and they want to feed you. They want to get to know you. And they are all very, very kind individuals. And I'm very proud to call myself Ukrainian.
Wow, that sounds incredible. The sunflowers. Wow. Especially today, the idea of a sunflower sounds amazing.
Yes.
So let's start off talking about why you came here, how old you were, and sort of what led you to the U.S. particularly.
Sure. So I immigrated here when I was almost 8 years old in 2003. So 2 years in the post 9/11 era.
Okay.
And I came here with my stepmother. And I was actually, the reason why I came here was because my mother, when I was about 7, passed from breast cancer. And so her sister, who was already living in the US, had been married to an American for a few years, had come back to bring me back and tried to adopt me and bring me back because I had nobody else to take care of me. Otherwise, I would have been left, as an orphan. So she brought me back with her and gave me the great life that I have today, along with my stepfather.
And can you talk a little bit about the process of that? What was that like at a such a young age to move countries, to get used to a new place? And it sounds like your immediate family structure changed quite dramatically at the same time. I mean, I know it's hard getting in touch with such a young self, but can you tell us a little bit about what that felt like?
Sure. So as a child, everything's an adventure. You don't really understand the complexities of all of those things. Losing somebody, immigrating, acculturation, assimilation, all of those struggles that I now look at in hindsight and think, well, could I have handled this differently? What was the actual complexity of it all? But I came here, it was actually fairly difficult for me to leave Ukraine, having no mother to sign off on me leaving the country, and having a birth father who was unable to sign off on me crossing the border. It almost came to the point where I wasn't going to be able to leave Ukraine, and so my stepmother, now my adoptive mother, would have had to have stayed with me and leave her life and her husband here till I reach the age of 16, until I am able to leave without, a signature of a father and a mother. So what my father did was he picked up his phone and dialed every state senator and dialed every member of our state government and begged, because he is a voter, he is a taxpayer, and he is about to become hopefully the stepfather of a child who may or may not be left an orphan in a country that doesn't really take care of orphans really well. And it's a very difficult system to be in. And after a few months of trying, we were successful in getting a humanitarian parole, which got me a physical piece of paper when I arrived in the U.S. border, for my mother who was for my adoptive mother who was a citizen, to bring me in with her. And then we began once I came here, we began the very complex adoption and immigration citizenship process.
That's an incredible way to harness the powers that be, right? To sort of do some good. How long did that take once you were here to get documentation that allowed you to stay in this country?
So because I'm also an adoption case, that made it 2 times more difficult. However, I remember going in 2009 to the state capitol to be sworn in as a citizen of the United States. So it took a lot of time, from 2003 to 2009, to become a citizen of the United States. I did have a social security card before then, but again, I was not a citizen of the U.S. I was a permanent resident.
And how old were you at that time in 2009 when that all happened?
I was 14.
Wow, okay.
I was in 9th grade. I remember having to skip school to go and being sworn in. And they had a special ceremony I would have had to wait months, if not years, to do it, because the line is so long. But because I was an adoption case, they had some sort of a celebration for adopted immigrant children who were adopted by parents who were citizens of the United States. And so it was me and then a bunch of babies, from anywhere from barely newborn to, 15 months old. And then there was me at 14 standing there in line.
That's pretty incredible. And what have the last few years been like then, since you were 14 to today? Can you speak a little bit about what it's like now that that process is behind you, and how do you feel about being here?
So I'm very happy and I'm very fortunate to be here. I think about that every single day, about how grateful I am to have every opportunity that was given to me after becoming a citizen of the United States. And just after immigrating to the United States, I would not have had the same upbringing had I not been brought here. I also think it's important to look at when I first came here. I was in 2nd grade. I was thrown right into school, which I'm very happy for. But my ultimate goal was to assimilate and become as American as possible. And my parents, didn't necessarily buy everything that, American-born children had. And a lot of times I felt like I was weird or unaccepted. And so I tried my best to become as American as possible. And then, and that continued through high school after I got my citizenship. And then I came to college, and there's that great awakening that happens when you're in college that I'm also very grateful for, because I realized that, being at Southern, we have such a ethnic and multicultural, group of students that you could actually be proud of where you're from and, bring that weird thing for lunch or celebrate those holidays or wear that shirt that would be considered strange or weird. And that's okay, because that's what makes you you. And now I'm actually trying to show more of my Ukrainian heritage than I would have 10, 15 years ago.
I think that's so interesting. I have a very similar experience of, as you said, just sort of feeling really alienated at first by the choices our parents make when they first move here, because they're still so close to the homeland and they still feel so connected to the home culture.
Of course.
But you're in this kind of position of, as you said, trying to assimilate, but also not wanting to fully let go. And I remember very much those feelings of, feeling like I, smelt of a certain type of spice, or, just feeling very much at odds with who I was inside. And I think very similar to you, once I got to college, I was able to embrace all the sides of me and understand that it was a beautiful thing to be from so many different places. And I think that's grown for me. I feel now that I'm connected with where I'm from in a whole new way. And language has become something really interesting for me. I grew up in Kenya, even though I'm ethnically Indian, and my family has a very long history of being in East Africa. But we also still have very strong South Asian roots. And Hindi has become something very significant for me. I've always struggled with it, always felt a little embarrassed by it and speaking it in public sometimes and not wanting to be seen as different or, strange in some way. But now I feel very privileged to have this language, and I really want to pass it on to my daughter. Can you tell us a little bit about the role of Ukrainian in your world? Has it something that stayed with you as a language? I imagine that did you learn some English when you were in Ukraine, and how was it to make that language transition for you when you came at the age of 8?
So I had completed kindergarten and about half of first grade when I first moved here. And upon being moved here, I was actually put into second grade because Ukrainian children go to school a year later. So my parents thought that, for cognitive development and behavioral development, it would be better if I went to school with children my own age. Mm-hmm. And, even the content that we learned was second grade content in first grade in Ukraine. So the only thing I had to learn was English. I did have a little bit of English background. I knew maybe 3 words because we in kindergarten and in first grade, we had actually learned English for an hour a day. And my English wasn't great. But, I acquired it fairly quickly and learned it very quickly due to some very nice, very great teachers in my life, ESL teachers that were very welcoming, understanding, and accommodating to me and my needs. As far as Ukrainian in my life, we still have plenty of Ukrainian friends around here. For about, I would say about a year and a half, I had found a Ukrainian diaspora up in Wethersfield. Oh, wow. And that was something dancing is a huge part of Ukrainian culture.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And we have our own Ukrainian dancing. It's very beautiful. YouTube it if you can. It's gorgeous. It's colorful. And I've always wanted to do that. My parents put me into dance classes, so I already had a little bit of a ballet background. And so I've Googled and I found this diaspora. And I would drive, or my mother would drive me, and then once I got my courage up, I would drive myself to Wethersfield about an hour every Thursday night to participate in that. You go that extra mile to find people of your own liking. And what I actually found was that I wasn't diaspora Ukrainian, because that's also that it's different, because these kids had grown up, they were 3rd, 4th generation Ukrainians. Their parents left Ukraine when Poland was a big superpower and owned a part of Ukraine. So even the Ukrainian they speak isn't the same Ukrainian I know, and I had some trouble understanding them. And a lot of those kids didn't speak Ukrainian or spoke very little. You know, their parents tried. They put them into Ukrainian school and church on Sundays to learn. And what that was great. They had their own cultural group, but that wasn't my Ukrainian experience because I was one of the few there that had actually grown up there. So I, you know, I was a part of that for a little bit, but there was still something that had to be met. And it is important to state that my mother still makes it a priority every single summer to go back to Ukraine so I wouldn't forget my language, my culture, my heritage, and my family, because my entire family is still over there. Yeah, so there's, you know, my grandparent, you know, my grandparents' siblings and my cousins and my friends that I had grown up on the same block with are all still around for the most part. And so it's great that I'm very much, you know, still straight out of Ukraine, as I like to call it, because my mother wouldn't let me forget. And when I first moved here, I came home one day just speaking English. And my mother had a fit, and she told me that I don't understand you. You have to start speaking Ukrainian again. And I hated her.
Did you only speak Ukrainian at home? Was that the norm before?
When I first moved here, because I was learning English, and my stepfather, he was, you know, American. So, you know, 75% of my life, if you look at it that way, was in English. And then my mother was my only input of Ukrainian. And so we did have a few family friends that spoke Russian and everything, but she wanted me to retain my language more. And I hated her for that at the time. I would cry, I would throw a fit. But now I'm very thankful because that first time after getting my American passport and being able to go to Ukraine, I was very thankful that I could communicate with my friends again after not seeing them for 2 years. And that was that aha moment of maybe she knew what she was doing.
She was doing something good right then.
Exactly.
Yeah, I you know, my mother used to sit me down when from the age of, I want to say around 7, and we would have Hindi class on Saturday morning, and I absolutely hated it and hated her for making me do anything on a Saturday, and second of all, you know, as I said, something with this odd language that I felt so alienated from anyway. And then I moved to India when I was in my 20s, and somehow had this language inside of me that had a chance to come out, and I realized it allowed me this connection to a country and to people that I was so grateful for. But I think that, you know, it kind of brings up that feeling of feeling very ruptured always, this feeling of being at home in two different places and feeling like you are two halves sometimes that don't always meet in the middle. And I want to talk a little bit about what your relationship with Ukraine is, since you go back every summer. Tell us a little bit about what it's like to go back as a Southern student. I know you're in your master's program of education there, and you're training to be a teacher. And am I right?
Yes.
And that you're training to be a teacher of TESOL,
yes.
Correct? So you want to work with other children who may have had similar struggles to you and not always feeling connected through language. What is it like going back there?
So I think most immigrant individuals, children, adults, whenever you immigrated, wherever you went and wherever you're from, can agree that you feel like you belong in two places at once, but at the same time you feel like you're an outsider at two places at once. And that's a very big conflict. Over there, when I go back, I am still, you know, I am a privileged female. Because I live here, you know, I have more access. I have more opportunities, and I have an easier life than people over there.
And is that something that you're reminded of when you go there? In the sense that I often hear my students tell me Well, when I go back to America, people still ask me if they can have things that I own because they're just simply because from their America, or they presume I'm very wealthy simply because I've come from America. Is there still those ideas about the United States in the Ukraine? And because when you return there and now you're American to some extent, do they approach you with those same questions? Oh, do you have a big house and what is it like there? Is that still very much alive there?
Yes, and I feel like many people who live outside the U.S. they perceive the U.S. as what you see in the movies, very clean streets. You're from what I thought when I was here. I thought that the U.S. consisted of New York, Florida, and Disneyland. That's all.
Right.
And I thought I was going to live in one of those places. And I was very wrong because I was put into the suburbs of Trumbull, Connecticut. And that was not like that at all.
Not Disneyland. Not in the same way anyway, but yeah, sure.
But when I go back every summer, like I said, I'm a very open person. So we always let everybody know, we do have more opportunity, more access here, but that doesn't make us, millionaires and, just wealthy enough to be able to splurge on anything and everything. We do live that lifestyle when we're over there that, we buy groceries wherever we go, whosever house we go to, we buy groceries. We pay for if we go take public transportation anywhere, or if we need a taxi anywhere. We've paid for everything. Restaurants we pay for. So that does kind of bring up that very unrealistic facade of I can afford anything. At the same time, though, we always try to remain grounded. And it's funny, my friends will think, I live in America my whole, all but 3 weeks of the year. And so I should be this person who loves fancy things and fancy clothes and can't be bothered to go to, and I'm from a village, we don't even have indoor plumbing in most of the houses. And they think, I need to be put up in a hotel room with showers. And I go back there and I jump right into that same thing of, I don't care about using an outhouse. I don't care about having to boil my water to take a shower. I don't mind having to go to the chicken coop to get some eggs. It's you jump into those roles again, and I feel uncomfortable, displaying that maybe that unrealistic, not factual at all facade of I'm wealthy and everything, because that's not true. You appear wealthy to them, but over here you're just middle class and or middle lower class or lower class, and even if you come here, even if you are of the lower socioeconomic status here, going home you may be wealthy to them.
Is that it sounds, your village sounds amazing. I mean, so no indoor plumbing and is that hard to explain to your friends here when you talk about your summers at home in Ukraine? Do they find it hard to understand what that might be like for you?
I imagine that it's different for them to perceive that type of lifestyle. And it is very different, not even with the indoor plumbing, just the type of life, people live to survive. Just because life over there is so difficult. So it's all, it is very different in that regard, but they do try to understand. And I've brought 3 individuals to visit Ukraine with me.
Oh, wow.
And they have all been very, very, enthusiastic about it all. They don't mind the conditions at all. Nobody had ever presented any sort of conflict about going to the bathroom outside or not being able to take a shower every single day. You kind of, and I come home now and I've learned to love my shower because we take it for granted. We really do. And in my village, it's not, some people do have indoor plumbing, and some people do have, cars, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people still have to take public transportation. We have a little mini bus that goes into Kiev, and we're about 20 minutes outside of Kiev. So we do have that access to public transportation. But you have a lot of people that still have to, burn their trash and boil their water to shower. So it is all very, very different.
And is the goal to continue to return to the Ukraine every summer? What do you hope for your connection in the future to the country in which you were born?
My goal is to return back every summer or at least once a year. I would be very disappointed if I can't. However, I've also been very fortunate that my mother has been able to provide that privilege for me.
Mm-hmm.
If I one day cannot, don't have time or can't do it, it would be very disappointing. And I'm gonna try to go back every single summer, whatever it takes, because that is my one connection, is being able to see my family.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that things have changed in terms of people's perceptions of the U.S. since Trump has been in power? Have you seen a change in terms of how people view this country?
I have. And Ukraine in itself is still a very conservative country, very nationalistic. So you would think that, those factors would make Ukrainians sympathize with the new administration. However, even from their outside glance, they're looking at it as this isn't right. It's not. And that's when I, in 2016, well, 2017, really, I went back that summer and everybody was asking me, well, how do you like your new president? And after expressing, my my thoughts, my negative thoughts, they were very, very accepting because they were looking at him and the way that even, Ukrainian media looks at him.
Mm-hmm.
He's a very interesting
Sure. That's
character.
a good word. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, fantastic, Anastasia. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been fascinating to learn about the Ukraine and about your relationship with this country that you were born in, and that seems very important to you and stayed very central to who you are. I hope that you'll join me again on Tea with Anjali on WNHH Radio. We're broadcast at 103.5 FM and live streamed on the New Haven Independence website, Facebook Live, and Twitter. Thank you again. And I hope you stay warm and join us in 2 weeks. We will learn more about New Haven's immigrant community. And between now and then, remember that walls don't work. They only serve to keep people scared and isolated. Thank you.
You've run from foster homes in
Are we good though? Okay.
Okay.
What?
Okay. Perfect. Yeah, it'd be fascinating to talk talk to him. And if he doesn't, sorry, we probably have to get out of here. But, oh, okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Okay, okay. Where should I just up until when I introduce Anastasia? No, not even her. No. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. 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 Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the first installment of Tea with Anjali on WNHH Radio. No, it's okay. Am I still not close enough to the mic or? Oh, okay. Oh, oh wow. Oh, okay. Okay. Hello, hello. Good afternoon. Welcome to the first installment of Tea with Anjali on WNHH Radio. I'm your host, Anjali Wasson, and I invite you to stay with me for half an hour as we examine immigration, the idea of home, and what New Haven and America means to the people who weren't born here. Okay. Any? Yeah, Tea with Anjali. I don't know. You tell me. Yeah, right? Yeah, 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 yeah. Help me. Yeah, 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 exactly, exactly. Okay, come up with another name. Okay. Something that reflects what the show is about a little more, right? Yeah. Yeah, something like that, right? Yeah, Crossing Borders is a good one. I've thought about Homeland. Um, but okay, something, something. And then send you like a blurb of 150 words kind of thing, or even less. Okay, okay, okay. Great. Should I send that to you today as soon as I get out of work? Okay. Okay. Oh, okay. Great. Great. Alrighty. And then people want to catch up with us on SoundCloud. Oh, 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 okay. Yeah, that's what I figured. I do. Oh God. Okay. I don't take pictures well, so. Yeah, I just like I don't always wear my glasses. Then I'm always like, take off your glasses, but I'll have them with my glasses on. Yeah, completely.
Oh yeah, and that's another thing. You should have put on the headset. So, and because in the headset, if you don't hear yourself, then you can sound. The second one, the reason it didn't work is it went to. So I hit the YouTube and it went into commercial instead of. Thank you. Um, like hopefully you go and you're and I think you're gonna end up love. This is how you see most. So so people people gonna people gonna send me this good. Oh, what the future? I don't know.
Hello, hello. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Anjali on WNHH Radio. I'm your host, Anjali Wasson, and I invite you to stay with me for half an hour as we examine immigration. Hello, hello. Good afternoon. Welcome to the first installment of Tea with Anjali on WNHH Radio. I'm your host, Anjali Wasson, and I invite you to stay with me for half an hour as we examine immigration, the idea of home, and what New Haven and America means to the people who weren't born here. Hello, hello. Good afternoon. Welcome to the first installment of Tea with Anjali on WNHH Radio. I'm your host, Anjali Wasson, and I invite you to stay with me for half an hour as we examine immigration, the idea of home, and what New Haven and America means to the people
on
who weren't born here. I'm your host, Anjali Wasson, and I invite you to stay with me for half an hour as we examine immigration, the idea of home, and what New Haven in America means to the people who weren't. Hello, hello. Good afternoon. Welcome to the first installment of Tea with Anjali on WN. Hello, hello. Good afternoon. Welcome to the first installment of Tea with Anjali on WNHH Radio. I'm your host, Anjali Wasson, and I invite you to stay with me for half an hour as we examine immigration, the idea of home, and what New Haven and America means to the people who weren't born here. The idea of home and what New Haven and America means to the people who weren't born here. Hello, hello. Good afternoon. Welcome to the first installment of Tea with Anjali on WNHH Radio. I'm your host, Anjali Wasson, and I invite you to stay with me for half an hour as we examine immigration, the idea of home, and what New Haven and America means to the people who weren't born here. We all come from different places, and we choose and sometimes not choose to make this place our home. What does that mean to us? And where does it leave us in terms of looking at the future and the past? Today I'm joined by Anastasia Ugolik, who was born in the Ukraine and moved to the US when she was 8. She joins me in the studio today to talk about what arriving here as a preteen felt like and what life in the US has been since we weren't born here. We all come from different places, and we choose and sometimes not choose to make this place our home. What does that mean to us? And where does it leave us in terms examine immigration, the idea of home, and what New Haven and America means to the people who weren't born here. We all come from different places, and we choose and sometimes not choose to make this place our home. What does that mean to us? And where does it leave us in terms of looking at the future and the past? Today I'm... Hello, hello. Good afternoon. Welcome to the first installment of Tea with Anjali on WNHH Radio. I'm your host, Anjali Wasson, and I invite you to stay with me for half an hour as we examine immigration, the idea of home, and what New Haven and America means